lost his girlfriend to a tranny. Back here with another video. Thank you for the 8 people who watched my last video. I have a very special video for you today. I was browsing the interwebs late one night and discovered the holy grail of controversial movies. What a better point in history to talk about the 1986 classic Soulman. The story of a rich white boy pretending to be black to gain a black-only scholarship to Harvard Law School, and he learns the differences for life as a black man. Remember to like, comment and subscribe, and follow @CancelingCulture on Instagram for more. For a little bit of context, I thought I would explain some of the production around this controversial flick. This is written by Carol Black, who's best known for being the creator of both The Ellen Show and The Wonder Years. Somehow this film slipped through her resume. Produced by Risky Business and Forrest Gump producer Steve Tisch, this film definitely has a Risky Business, Ferris Bueller vibe about it and something kind of fun. I don't know who out of the highly regarded professionals came up with the blackface makeup, but my god, it is a moneymaker. I would love Hollywood to start blackfacing all their beloved characters away. So with a budget of $4.5 million, somehow surprisingly this film was boycotted and slammed critically. But it was actually a commercial success, grossing $35 million at the box office. And now, I'm going to say this now, I actually quite enjoyed this film, quite a lot. Yes, the blackface is messed up and wrong on so many levels, and I really do hope they never make something like this again. However, there's something fucking miraculous that Hollywood gave any sort of idea similar to this any money at all, let alone $4.5 million. So, without further delay, let's take you through this iconically horrific cinematic experience. Okay, so this questionable movie opens with Muddy Waters' Hoochie Coochie Man. We're introduced to Mark Watson. He's asleep in bed. Mark begins to hear the moans of a girl in his bed, much to his surprise. So he begins to check her out underneath the duvet before his friend Gordon bursts in to tell Mark the mail has come.
Hi.
Being nervous, they swap letters back and forth one another before they finally open them to reveal that they got into Harvard Law School. I do have one great note. Gordon, his best friend, has a great Hawaiian shirt and he consistently has decent wardrobe throughout this entire film. Following the success into getting into their dream college, they decide to have a party. And of course, it's the most 80s thing you can imagine. The fashion is awful. There's a guy with a yellow polo with a black blazer. That's not even the worst of it, that's just something that I picked out. This guy's name, who's wearing the polo, is named Bradley. And Bradley is not going to Harvard because he's a scrub. So afterwards, So afterwards, smoking under the table, their friend Seth introduces himself and he mentions that he's into biochemical research, mainly into suntan lotion. After the party in the morning, Mark is in the driveway with his parents and for some reason they're exercising on some shitty equipment. I'm not quite sure what that one's all about. Yeah, I don't know, 80s fad. Mark's dad is pretty shitty to everybody. He's a pretty big dick. So to celebrate his success into getting into Harvard Law School, when Mark's father mentions that he has a surprise for him, Mark immediately assumes that he's got a Ferrari. Mark's dad wants to give him something after spoiling him for years, and that is his manhood. He wants him to buy his own way, pave his own way to Harvard, and he is going to make Mark pay for all of it. Mark thinks this is a joke, and he proceeds to just fuck with him, but actually, his dad is really serious. There's a great POV shot of Mark's dad swinging up and down, revealing Mark and his response each time. It's quite fun. He tries to get his dad to change his mind, but his dad is never swayed. He believes it is necessary. The next scene is quite dramatic. Mark is seen with a noose right in front of him, looking like he's about to hang himself, and he is proceeding to list out all of the costs that would take him for 4 years of college, coming out with a total sum of $53,979. This for Mark, somebody who's probably never worked in their whole life, is a very unobtainable number. Mark has a Cabbage Patch Kid dressed as his dad and ties his head in the noose and begins to strangle him and hang him. This is then followed by Mark and his friend sitting beneath a statue discussing the potential scholarships that Mark could apply for, finding the perfect one, but it's only for black applicants. With no luck in the scholarships, Mark then decides to go for a loan. The bank teller doesn't trust Mark and refuses him a loan after Mark tries his hardest to lie his way out of it after finding some unnecessary expenses on his statement. We now get Mark in therapy, and Mark is explaining his whole situation, but then it's revealed the person that he's talking to is his dad's therapist, and he's actually trying to get him to go back on the advice that he gave him, which Mark believes to be bad advice. Mark wants this done by Father's Day, which is in a week. The therapist is kind of threatening and begins to tell a story about how his son is similar to Mark and how he hates his wife. This is a really interesting scene because something. Alright, we're in a bar. Bradley's got a gay pink sweater. Bradley confronts Mark about not getting into Harvard, but Mark begins to have a drunken rant about how he is going to Harvard. So Bradley calls him a liar before Gordon intervenes and explains that he's not going to Harvard. Mark has a troubling look on his face as that he comes up with an idea that is unimaginable. Now, yes, this is where the film takes a turn, and I don't know why I decided to review this film, but do you know what? Yeah, I do. Mark gets accepted into Harvard under the scholarship he found earlier, which was only for black applicants. Now, the way he does this is through the unorthodox method of applying blackface, but it's through the suntan lotions that he got from his friend Seth earlier in the movie. Yeah, it's not great, but it is fucking amazing. How the fuck did this get made? Anyway, it blows my mind. Anyway, so they don't really sugarcoat it. They give him big bushy eyebrows and they the afro and the whole kind of thing. And they literally picked like the whitest kid to make him black. I don't even know. It's kind of genius in a way, but it's so fucked. It's so fucked. Now, I don't condone the use of blackface, but this film is from 1986. Alright, that was like 15 years before I was even thought of. So like, 14 years maybe. Alright, so for some reason, Gordon is running in the littlest red little shorts. It's kind of like the gayest scene of the whole movie. I put in brackets as of writing, and no, I'm pretty sure this is the gayest scene that I found in the movie. Not that I got anything wrong with gay, but the 80s, there was something about it would make heterosexual men gay, which was, like Rocky and Apollo Creed, jumping in the, I suppose you could say it's platonic, Adam, whatever. You're not thinking very liberal here. Alright, man, yeah, calm down. Anyway, I put a note here. Were all men's shorts really that small in the 1980s? It's just, they're just riding up. There's nothing there. Anyway, Mark begins to running alongside. You're probably thinking, oh, you're going on about those shorts a bit too much. You're probably fucking gay. Yeah, anyway, shut up. Mark begins to run alongside Gordon in blackface, but Gordon doesn't recognize him and he tries to run past, but as he does so, Mark calls out Gordon's name, causing him to be distracting and ending up running straight off the pier. This is where Mark explains that he has suntan lotions from Seth. I just told you about it a little bit earlier. He says the amazing line,
"But you're not tan. You're black." Yeah.
And there's also,
"These are the 80s, man. It's the Cosby decade."
Yeah, it's yeah. And then it goes straight into Soulman by Sam and Dave, which is just the fucking maddest thing. You got a big dog on the back of their truck for some reason, obviously for their college room or something. But they're moving into college. Like Mark and Gordon, they're going around, they're doing their thing, they're going and living. They're gonna be boys, gonna be men, do what they gotta do. A woman mistakes Mark for a white guy because he is one, but then he decides to tippex over his payment form, making Mark an official black student, which is just fucked. When they get to the house, they meet the landlord's friend, Roy, who is a racist, and they didn't realize that Mark was going to be black because obviously in the form he was white. Being now quoted a black... Now, this is a film from 1986 about a college kid pretending to be black. I think we'd all be grown up. I mean, I'll beep it out, but you know what I said. But it was the other one. It wasn't the main one. It was the other one. Leslie Nielsen, the classic man from Naked Gun and beyond, is the landlord, and he warns Roy to look out for anything like loud music, drugs, damage, and pets, just to get them evicted. This is followed by Mark lighting a joint, playing loud music, and Gordon banging a nail into the wall and claiming they should get an ocelot. I know, I do love the comparison. Like, this film, like, there is funny stuff in it, and it's so bad, because, like, you can never say to someone, oh, this is a good film, because, like... Yeah, it's fucked, dude. So Mark and Gordon are at their freshers meeting when they hear two guys beginning to tell a joke about a black guy before turning around to see Mark in his full blackface glory. He tells them don't worry about it and no offense is taken, and they walk away laughing. Mark and Gordon then proceed to have a conversation about their underwear system, how one of them can have girls with underwear and one of them can have the girls without underwear. I honestly can't imagine going to a high society college. It looks fucking horrible. And I can't imagine disguised as a black man for 3 years. Not saying that being a black man, but can you imagine being disguised as not yourself for 3 years? People aren't even undercover in like the police for that long, and it drives them nuts. I suppose they're probably like kneecapping people and like dipping people in acid just to like fit in and make sure they're not, you know, their cover's not blown. I suppose it's a bit different to just pretending to be black or pretending to be a different race or whatever. I don't know. A fine young Ray Dong Chong comes and meets Mark. Now, Ray Dong Chong is actually Tommy Chong's daughter, which is actually quite interesting. I didn't realize that until looking at this. And she's also in Commando, and I didn't realize it's the woman from Commando. Anyway, she plays Sarah, and she's going to be the love interest of this film. And she invites him to the BLSA meeting coming this following Thursday. Mark begins to take criminal law for this semester because he found out the professor is black and thinks he's going to get an easy pass. And the professor happens to be legend James Earl Jones, who famously voiced Mufasa and, of course, Darth Vader, two iconic fathers. He also played the dad in Coming to America, I'm pretty sure. After they're signing up for criminal law, Mark is at the back of his class and he's trying to be black, and during the register he says, "Right on," instead of "yes, sir." And this is much to James Earl Jones' disgrace. James Earl Jones is a real hard nut, and he basically wants everybody to do the best in their class, but he's also kind of an asshole about it. Mark ends up sitting next to Sarah from earlier, and he's desperately trying to hit on her. Some girl starts crying because she got a question wrong, and after class, Mark confronts Sarah and asks if she wants to study with him. This is probably one of the most funny scenes in the movie. Mark and Gordon decide to sign up for basketball, and the two team captains begin to argue who gets Mark on their team, purely because he's black, even claiming one of them has Leon on their team, so it's only fair, as Leon is another black guy. Mark insists that he's not even very good, and it ends with the men tussling and the ref blowing the whistle. One of the team captains keeps getting Mark's name wrong, calling him Marcus Washington instead of Mark Watson. So old man begins to play yet again while the boys play basketball. Soulman. Anyway, Mark is absolutely shit at playing basketball in this hilarious sports montage. Getting some gay vibes from the team captains. They're really having a go at each other, squirting water in each other's faces. Marcus acts like a total goof in this, and I get they were trying to make him like a kind of like he's bad at basketball, but also he just acts like a fucking retard. So is he a retard as well as a racist? Is it excusable, the fact that he's racist because he's a retard, or is it just, I don't know. Anyway, Mark hits himself in the nuts with the basketball, and the basketball game ends, and Mark is back in class. Most intense classroom that I'd ever see. Mark and Gordon are discussing their study dates just before Bradley and his girlfriend notice Gordon, so Mark puts on some sunglasses and pretends to be blind, deaf, and black all at the same time. The holy trifecta of fucked up shit that's gonna take you to hell. It's awful. So Gordon tries to cover for Mark by saying that his name is Kareem and that he doesn't speak English, and he just sways side to side doing the whole Stevie Wonder thing. It's really not that good. And so he says that he's Canadian and he's looking for work. Bradley explains that he's been on the top of the transfer list for Harvard, and if one person gets kicked out on their class, then he's in. This makes Mark panic, and Gordon is being the best friend he can. He tries to get Bradley and I can't remember her fucking name, but fucking Bradley's girlfriend away. The stud Mark is relaxing in his apartment when his cute neighbor Whitney comes in asking for help with her shower. After explaining she is getting a degree in civil rights, Mark expresses a deep interest in civil rights. We are then greeted at the headboard banging on the bed as you can hear moaning and groaning.
I mean, it was like I could really feel 400 years of oppression and anger in every pelvic thrust.
That's a line. That's not just coming from the heart from me. There are untrue stereotypes such as your penis size. Great joke. Whitney gives him head after inviting him to dinner. Which a girl gave me head after inviting me to dinner, buying me dinner and then giving me head. Mark is eating a very classy dinner with his cute neighbor Whitney. He has just been fucking, and her family. Her mother asks if he wants more food before his mother fantasizing him as an African jungle man wanting this one white woman. The little brother sees him as Prince, yes, the musician Prince, and he's playing guitar on the table. Leslie Nielsen sees his daughter Whitney pregnant, and Mark is a feather boa wearing pimp, eating watermelon and calling her a white fat ass slut. Jesus Christ, how was this made? Mark arrives back at his apartment after dinner for Gordon to let him know that Sarah called and she sounded pissed due to him missing their study date. You don't beg a girl for a date and then miss it. Mark only scores a C+ on his test and tries to get Sarah to study that night, but she refuses. I mean, he did stand her up and he's pretending to be black, and like, bear in mind this girl is black as well. While on a date with his neighbor, she is interested in what is the problem and where are they going and all of that shit. And then Mark tries to get the attention of the barista, and it happens to be Sarah. Completely disgusted that he's now on a date with another girl after standing her up, she walks away, leaving them without any coffee. Anyway, Mark's in the library and he overhears the two guys from earlier talking about jokes, telling a yet another black guy joke. Mark tells them that he takes no offense. I wonder why. Mark begins to drive home, and while driving home, he is tailed by a local police officer who begins to prowl on Mark, waiting for him to slip up. And when a woman holding a baby suddenly appears getting out of her car, Mark quickly moves to the other side of the road to achieve safety for that baby, making the police officer pull him over. The police officer is suspicious and asks him if he has his license or if he's lost it, and assumes he has. Mark then fights back and says that of course he has his license, why wouldn't he have it, realizing as he pulls it out that it's got a photo of white him on the license. He claims to have lost it and ends up getting arrested and put in a cell with a bunch of drunk baseball fans. And here will be the first N-word drop of the movie at 49 minutes and 5 seconds, which is much later than I thought it was going to be. I assumed we were going to have a lot of this in throughout the movie, but it is the one and only truly one, and I'm glad of it. They truly did know that they weren't making a completely fucked up movie then. The guys in the cell lost their game to a bunch of as they began to fuck Mark up. Basically, Mark shows up to class after being in jail, and he's late, and he's covered in bruises, and he's got plasters all over him, and the douchebag in the class says Mark has turned up in his native attire due to his long black coat. The teacher gives Mark advice to study harder and try harder, but Mark fails in giving in his assignment. After Mark fails in giving in his assignment on time, the teacher also gives Mark his number to call him if he ever ends up in jail again, before wishing him a happy Thanksgiving and making the deadline for his assignment tomorrow morning. It is Thanksgiving. Mark is eating probably the roughest looking ready meal known to man. He has to get this essay done for 9 in the morning, otherwise he fails. I forgot watching this that everybody would have had to write on a typewriter, and that must have been so loud and annoying, especially late at night in a flat. Although the mechanical keyboard isn't much better. Louis Armstrong Black and Blue starts playing as Mark finishes his essay and the teacher reads it in his smoking jacket. Mark walks into an elevator full of white people who don't take a shine to his black face. Mark starts to try and get the attention of Sarah after he missed their study date. He sits down to eat in a cafe next to a little black boy whose name is George Walker. Mark realizes that it's Sarah's son. Sarah quickly ushers her son away. Why did the Negro wear a tux to his vasectomy? Because if I'm going to be impotent, I may as well look important. Mark notices those two boys telling jokes for a third time and begins to take offense after a few examples of him experiencing what black people experience. It sounds fucking crazy, isn't it? Anyway, we got a montage. Sarah has to get an A on the final exam in 2 weeks, and Mark convinces Sarah to study with him. Mark meets Sarah's family, who talk about how proud his family must be to have a black man in Harvard. Sarah's son wants to watch Johnny Carson. Sarah was offered food stamps in a supermarket when she didn't have any, and was married for 2 years. Sarah asks about Whitney, and for some reason it begins to snow and sexy saxophone music begins to play. They end up going outside and kissing. She explains that she's never been in the snow and she's from San Diego. He tells her that he is from LA, and she explains that he must be the one that stole her scholarship after only applying a few days after Mark. Guilt-filled Mark starts to realize the error of his way, but Sarah says she's glad it was him. Mark is pacing back and forth discussing the morality of his choices in making Sarah lose her scholarship. Mark runs out confessing that he is going to turn himself in. Gordon runs out in his underwear into the street trying to stop Mark, but Mark drives away, while his creepy racist neighbor Roy clears his throat on the porch behind him. Mark and Gordon's friend Bradley and his girlfriend notice Mark's name despite not seeing him around campus or with Gordon the whole time. The professor thinks that Mark has been cheating on his essay, and he explains that he is the chairman for the committee for cheating and fraud. It develops into a conversation about a student who committed fraud and suffered a loss in reputation but also criminal charges. Mark assumes that he has been caught moments before he comes clean. The professor cuts him off and tells him that he will be recommended for the committee himself, much to Mark's shock. Mark accepts being on the committee, and on his way he bumps into Bradley and his girlfriend. quickly placing on his glasses and doing the whole Stevie Wonder swaying back and forth thing yet again. Mark arrives back at his apartment and talks to Gordon about how illegal what he'd done is, and Gordon tells Mark to go to his room. Mark is confused, but when Mark opens the door to find a half-dressed Whitney quickly slamming the door shut, he confronts Whitney about being in his house. At the same time, the doorbell goes and he assumes it is Sarah, but it turns out to be his parents coming to visit. So he panics and places a ski mask on his head due to his parents not realizing that he is black. He claims that he is really ill and has to be covered because he is extremely cold. Taking his parents into another room, Mark begins distracting them. At the same time, Sarah arrives at the door and asks where Mark is. As Gordon is covering for him, Mark bursts through the door. He wants to study at the library so he can get away from his parents, but she gave the babysitter his house number in case of an emergency. At this point in the story, I don't even know if it's bad that I kind of got used to the blackface, but it ain't right, but it sure does seem like, what's the word, complex? How this got made? I don't even know. Explaining that he's going to sort coffee out in the kitchen, Mark puts his balaclava back on before going it back and forth between the rooms. Whitney begins to look around and put some records on, alarming if Sarah is in the room as music starts to play. In confusion and seeing the kitchen door open, Mark walks straight into the kitchen, full blackface, and begins to really turn it up a notch to throw his parents off.
What's happening, brother? Get down, looking good, mama, looking good. Well, I got to be going now.
A confused Sarah tries to ask Gordon what's wrong with Mark, but as Mark walks past and goes into his bedroom, he picks up Whitney and puts her on his fire escape, and Sarah is asking is anybody in the kitchen. Mark's parents walk out of the kitchen and pronounce themselves Mark's parents, immediately confusing Sarah because of the apparent skin color difference. What the fuck have I got myself into? Gordon covers himself, claiming that they are mentally ill old people, and they try to kick them out before Sarah asks to speak to Mark privately. She wants to know the truth, and Mark asks her about interracial couples. The landlord's mate, Roy, calls the landlord to let him know that something is going on after witnessing Whitney creeping on the fire escape. Whitney goes back through the window into Mark's room, and Sarah sees her, so she storms out, and Mark follows her, being confronted by his white parents, and he calls his dad while black. Mark then tells Sarah the truth, but she doesn't believe him and storms out. Mark comes clean with his parents, Mum, Dad, and Black. As Mark rushes to stop Sarah, Leslie Nielsen runs up and punches Mark in the stomach. They get an eviction notice. Then we are introduced to the most intense 80s montage all about an exam that you have ever damn seen. Just people stressing, writing, and time lapses of clocks. Gordon is leaving and Mark is staying behind to figure shit out. Mark starts looking like Michael Jackson in Thriller by the end of the film, and everybody in school begins discussing the up-and-coming committee meeting to do with Mark. Kids are betting, and Whitney is now with a Native American, really getting into that diversity and civil rights thing. We have a court scene for some reason, and it's the meeting, but it's treated like a court scene, and Mark isn't present for whatever reason, but Gordon swoops in last minute and becomes his lawyer. Even though it isn't a court scene, he makes it a court scene. Gordon is the MVP, but as I said, he has great fashion throughout this whole film, but this scene, awful tie. Mark walks into the meeting white, and everybody starts to piece it all together. Bradley bursts in with the evidence of Mark being white just a little bit too late, completely bringing nothing to his character. The professors let Mark stay in college due to him learning a lesson about being black or something. It's not really clear what the moral lesson was. He gave up everything, and he gave his scholarship to fucking Sarah, and I suppose he's good now or something, so he can stay in, but he's now working in the cafe that Sarah used to work at, and Sarah passes her exam as well as Mark, so yay. And anyway, those guys making the racist jokes from earlier, they make a racist joke around Sarah and her little boy, but Mark's now white, but he stands up to them and he punches them, gaining the respect of the black people in the cafe, and that makes Sarah like him, so they hook up and get together, and yeah. Fuck. Right, it's over. Okay, so honest final thoughts. It's not the worst movie ever made. Cinematography, editing, casting, costume, even the storyline are all extremely well done for what it is. It's an extremely taboo subject to make a film about, but honestly, this is like the best version of the film that you could have got. It's awful. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like overtly racist. It's not, like, again, not right. but at least it's not like I was expecting the N-word drop like every second and like it was ready. But the race thing kind of comes into play, it's kind of just like a rom-com kind of thing. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, enjoy this. Make sure you tune in every fucking like 2 months. These videos come out now, so yeah, enjoy.